Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here today with founder and chief editor Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
It is going well, thank you very much. Got my walk in, feeling invigorated. My birthday's rapidly approaching.
Oh, Lord. Oh, wow. Another one.
Another
Yeah, at a
one. I
certain
won't
point,
say how
they're
many
more
it is.
yeah, at a certain point, they just become disappointment more than they become,
Yeah, exactly,
something to look
exactly.
forward to. It's like, oh,
I,
yay, it's my birthday.
I have something to look forward to. My wife always makes me a pineapple upside down cake.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. All right. So today we're going to talk about Boeing and SAF targets. We're going
Mhm.
to talk about a combination of um, coal and solar in Minnesota, some Norway updates. We've got a discussion about EV leasing. I got something about Jim Farley from Ford. We
Oh,
got
okay.
something about a solar blanket and what Californians
Cover up.
feel about Teslas now. And so we'll
Mhm.
go ahead and we're going to start out talking about this article about Boeing. So more electric cars are key to meeting SAF targets. And SAF stands for Sustainable Aviation Fuels,
Right.
Boeing says. Now, I read the article and I really feel like Boeing is kind of trying to kick the can down the road. But Boeing is blaming the lack of sustainable aviation fuels on the fact that diesel trucks are getting first dibs on all of the corn fuel. And
Okay.
that's kind of how I read into the article. So it's like Boeing's feeling is like everybody needs to buy an EV now, start driving
Right.
an EV, so that all of that corn can now go into aviation fuel,
Right.
so they can look better with the using the fuel from corn.
Yeah.
Now,
I can appreciate where they're coming from because look, if a truck runs out of fuel, it just pulls off to the side of the road, right?
right,
So it could conceivably go electric, and of course, there's a movement to get them into move them to fuel cells and hydrogen and that type of thing. It's a lot harder to do that with an airplane flying at 35,000 feet.
there's no question.
Yeah. So they want to continue to stay in business, and God knows they need some good news from 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 somewhere. Um, so you can see his argument, and that's what I thought was interesting when I saw that. I said, well, I'm going to put this up online because how often it is do you see an airline company like Boeing encouraging everybody else to go electric?
Right. Yeah. It is a funny concept, but
Yeah,
I look at some things for so starters. 30% of U.S. corn production is biofuel. Okay. Now,
ethanol. Yeah.
yeah. So we've talked before about this. You know, the funny thing is that corn isn't really good for human or animal consumption. It's somehow specifically, grown with
They
some way that's
just
optimized for
they
fuel.
just want the sugar. That's really what that's all about because they can take and get the little bugs to ferment the sugar and turn it into whatever end chemical they want it to be, depending on the enzymes they use in the processing. So yeah, the thing is where ethanol, we've had this discussion before, the low energy content of ethanol. They're not going to burn ethanol in these vehicles. They have to take and make that into something that has much more of a, and what's the word I'm looking for here? Much more of a lipid content to make it equivalent to a jet fuel to run gas turbine engines. So that they just can't say here, okay, everybody else go electric. We're going to hand over all of our ethanol. That's not going to happen. That's not what the end product is here. But just the very fact that you've got the company the size of Boeing saying, "Hey, would everybody else go electric so we can have our share of the biofuel?" That's the intriguing thing.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I noticed in the article, it stated that to hit their target for 2050, they have to produce 1,000 times as much
Yeah,
sustainable aviation fuel as they
yeah,
did last year.
yeah.
And so that's a pretty big change in the targets. Now I've told you about other projects I've seen. the question is, do those projects raise the money? Can the founders execute and bring it to market? And that's always one of the big challenges in anything is, can that be done? I mean, it can be done, but whether it will or not is a whole nother story. But it's kind of so they're saying the biofuel feedstock such as corn is in high demand from the ground transport sector. Now, obviously airplanes, in my opinion, are going to be the last thing to make any kind of transition away from jet fuel. Yeah. Okay, because there's other things. We've talked about hydrogen on here, and you and I we're both kind of lukewarm about hydrogen. It just it doesn't have the energy density, and so there's just issues with it. Electric doesn't really provide the same type of propulsion that jet does. And so there's a few things that are a challenge there. Obviously, we see electric airplanes, turboprops coming out, but they're not capable yet of being able to travel extremely long distances.
500 to 1,000 miles, although they get the folks at CATL were saying, well, we've got one that did, what was it? I think it was 5,000 miles or something like that. They have a battery that they think will be capable of doing that. So there was the 5 anyway. It was long enough to make it a potentially useful mid-range, short, what we might call short haul, airline operation. Although that's all based on you want the airplane in the air as much as possible, not sitting on the ground next to a charger.
You've been doing this a long time, and I've been doing it long enough that I've noticed there's certain constants. So the price of batteries keeps going down. People always say, oh, the rare earth minerals, all this. Well, the cost of making batteries for cars keeps going down, and it's going to keep going down. We can see the downward trajectory happening. What we're not really seeing is the ability to cheaply compress the battery so that there's more energy saved by weight for what's going on there. Now we keep seeing these claims from, like you're saying, like CATL, from NASA, from Toyota and other ones, but we don't see them at market yet, right? And we'd like to think that they'll be at market sometime soon. But the thing that they're not really talking about when they discuss these concepts is, what does that cost? So currently our LFP batteries, our lithium ion batteries are plummeting in pricing, and are these new batteries going to set us back to $2,010 on where the batteries were 10 times as expensive as what they are now? And I think that's the problem, is that there's technology out there that can be done. Can it be done economically? And
yeah, we're seeing a wave though of companies now saying that they're either available or they will shortly be, of the solid state batteries. And I've seen probably in the last month or so, I've seen I think 3 or 4 companies coming out and say they've started delivering, or they're in the final stages of delivering those batteries to car makers. So we're starting to see that happen.
I'd like to see the economics of that. I'd like to see where that's playing out in terms of kilowatt hours of storage versus cost of batteries.
On that yet.
I haven't yet, and that would be really interesting. If anybody's listening or watching and has access to any data about the economics of solid state versus the current types of batteries, I'd be real interested in knowing what that cost per kilowatt hour is comparatively, because I'm of the opinion it's probably 10x. But
I don't know.
If it's a lot less, I'll be surprised. I mean, obviously we need it to be no more than 2x.
Well, but then again, you're talking about initial stages of production. So right. I could see it being that, and with all the ones I've seen at this point are all pouch type batteries, which are I think more, or what's the word I'm looking for? They're less costly to manufacture than stringing a whole bunch of what are they, 2670s or whatever, 45, whatever those sizes of batteries are. I'm still used to D cell and C cell and AAA cell and those kind of. But anyway, most of those are all look like they're pouch. Not unlike if you look up over my shoulder here, that's one of the early pouch type batteries from the Chevrolet Volt that General Motors gave me years ago. So that's what I think we're seeing, that becomes the cell that'll probably be used. It's much easier to package, and and of course the chemistry hopefully obviously is less prone to having runaway fires and things of that. I mean, we're talking about trucks. They took, what was it? They took 50,000 gallons of water to extinguish the fire of that Tesla semi that ran off the road crossing the Sierras. So that you can't.
I don't know why they didn't just let it burn out.
Well, the reason, because it's on the edge of it ran into some trees on the forest. Oh. So yeah, I don't think you wanted. You don't want that to
just run unchecked.
Yeah, you don't want that run unchecked. So, and of course, the interesting thing is that the advice now that they're passing out to fire departments for first responders is just let it burn. Because by the time you pour all this water on it, you're just creating a worse, environmental hazard than just having the thing burn itself out. That's assuming it's not somewhere where it can cause a much larger conflagration and spread, which was, I think, the case of this Tesla semi.
All right. Well, Bill, let's go ahead and move on to the most unbiased news source ever, CNN. Now, I normally it's another thing like Reuters. What are they trying to prove? But this was actually one of the better articles. I thought about saving this actually for tomorrow with Mike, because it's a topic he and I have covered sometimes. We're going to go ahead and discuss this. This is about the Sherco plant in Minnesota. And what this story is about, and I'm going to share this because it's actually got some decent visuals in this one.
Yeah, they're pretty interesting visuals, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we've got a coal-fired power plant in Minnesota that is being shut down, and Minnesota has installed thousands of acres of solar right here by the plant.
Look at that. I know, it's just amazing.
Now, here's one of the things, and I've looked a lot at electrical projects. I've looked at data center projects. I've looked at issues, and everything comes down to the grid. Okay, you hear all these things. Oh, the grid can't handle EVs. The grid can't handle this. The grid can't handle that. We've always heard this thing about if there was another one of these big solar flares from the sun, or we had an enemy country fire an EMP, had set us back 100 years in electrical grid. I don't know how true some of that stuff is, but I do know this: there is more sustainable energy in the United States waiting to be connected to the grid than currently is on the grid. And the problem with this is just what we're seeing here in this picture. Now, they built this solar farm because the transmission lines are right there. And so when the coal plant went down, they went live with the solar, and the solar was able to step right in. Okay, and use those transmission lines to send that power to the grid. And that's an unusual situation. And this article is titled, "A Polluting Coal-Fired Power Plant Found the Key to Solving America's Biggest Clean Energy Challenge." And that's really quite true. It is the real challenge, is being able to connect, having the infrastructure to connect these projects. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, so I was going to say the article has, I forget where in the heck I was going with that, but we have the same issue here basically with the Fort Calhoun plant. We've got all that infrastructure. We've got a nuclear power plant that's reached the end of its useful life. And, so that's what OPPD is looking to do, is they're wanting to connect a bunch of, solar fields there, but not, from what I can tell, not anywhere near the size of what that thing is in Minnesota.
Well, I don't know how big our nuclear power plant was here in Omaha. So, or, Blair, or whatever you want to call Fort Calhoun.
Yeah, it's Fort Calhoun plant, and I don't know, it's what, 5 megawatts, something like that.
Okay, not an extremely
No,
big.
not a lot, not a very big plant. Then there's the one down in Brownsville, the Cooper power plant. I think it's called Cooper. I mean, it's so far off my radar anymore
Right.
that I even remember the names of them is becoming a little bit of a challenge for my old brain. But yeah, that's what that report brings out. And I'm trying to think, it was a University of Berkeley, and it was a California, I think, a university that did this study, and basically said that we have all of these plants around that is the perfect tie-in to to supplement or eventually replace all these coal-fired plants, which that's what Nebraska has run on for the last 100 years, basically, or is that coal coming out of Wyoming, and those plants are reaching into their life cycle. They've got all that grid, all those wires and cables and towers and things running, to them or from them, I guess, as the case might be. And we're just a microcosm of what's available nationally. So I think that's what they're suggesting is there's a lot more capacity that we can add just simply by doing what they're doing in Minnesota.
No, this is a great project, and the article even says what I had said earlier. There's more electricity from clean energy waiting to get connected to the grid than the entire amount of energy connected on the grid. And you've had all of this investment to put that clean energy out there, and it's just simply not been able to connect. And it's funny because you hear all these claims like, "Oh, the grid can't handle all the cars." It's like, well, the grid can't even handle all the electricity, so it's funny really to think about. So that original plant started up in the 70s, and it's supposed to be fully retired by 2030. So they're not running it fully, but they're really seriously adding on the solar. It'll be the largest upper Midwest solar facility, and it looks like they've got a fair amount of it already plugged in. Here's kind of another visual from that. It's showing all the crazy transmission lines. Probably don't want to live underneath those transmission lines, but still, that's a lot of big high voltage transmission right there.
And well, I mean, what does one of those towers cost? I wonder. How many $100,000 to build one of those towers, and then
right.
all the I'm assuming they're using probably wrapped aluminum or something for transmission. I don't know if that's all copper, obviously. So there's a lot of money invested there, and there's no sense, if you can connect locally to the power station, do so. Absolutely. Of course, that means, then the question becomes, but what about all that agricultural land below it? And that's where I guess you contract with the local sheep farmer,
right?
And
there you go.
You just put the sheep in there to graze, and then you get the wool and the lamb's ribs or whatever out of them. So
let's see. Oh, this Sherco plant emitted 10.5 million tons of CO2 in 2022. The equivalent of 2 million cars.
One plant.
Man.
And we have, I don't know if comparatively, we've got just across the river, we've got a huge Mid-American coal-fired power plant. And, where I guess you could probably, assuming that you don't have problems with, periodic flooding of the Missouri Basin, you could probably put a lot of that under solar, running up and down the Missouri River, put solar panels in there, or do what they've done further down on the bluffs, take advantage of that elevation, have wind turbines up there.
That is a lot of solar panels. You could move your buffalo herds over here, and they could run around. They could sit in the shade underneath the
Oh,
panels, and
that would, hey, that would be, I ought to think about that.
that's really combining the different ecological systems. You
Yeah,
got
yeah,
the
wouldn't it?
green energy with the repopulating the
Ex-
buffalo.
Except in the rut.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd want to, yeah, that's kind of an interesting idea.
yeah, yeah. Anyways, just like I said, I'm not real big on CNN, but I thought this was really a pretty good discussion, and they don't misrepresent anything in the article, which I found quite impressive. So they obviously had no axe to grind with wind and solar by publishing this, which I know that for sure if Reuters had published this, they would have. They, they only seem to get somebody to write an article if Reuters only get somebody to write an article if they have an axe to grind with that industry. I mean, it really.
Again, we've talked about clicks. Hey,
Right.
we do that, don't we?
Yes. But yep, under Governor Tim Walz, the Democratic vice presidential candidate, the state is aggressively trying to decarbonize its power sector to get to 100% clean electricity by 2040.
Yeah.
17 years. That seems doable. You just you just never know in the space, what really can happen, and so much of it is based on the economy and interest rates and things like that. I mean, it's really hard to do.
A lot of it is driven by vision. You have a vision, you have goals, and you press to go forward with that, right?
Yeah, I get that.
Okay, that's yeah, there's the mechanics underneath that, but who's going to go forward if your coach is always saying you guys can't win? You can't win. You got to have somebody who's there and saying we can win. We can beat this other team. We are as good. We're better than they are. And instead of coming out and saying, yeah, there's no way you're going to win. So vision. And then, of course, you got to find the mechanics and the financing and all the things that go on behind the scenes to make it happen.
But like I said before, invariably when it comes to wind and solar, it's all about interest rates. The interest rates have to be less than what they can sell the electricity for. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge right now. That just doesn't work out. But there is a lot of power out there that's still not connected to the grid, and it's like there's no shortage of it. Anyways, we're going to move on to Norway. Norway's a topic that we like to talk about. Norway is a small country that, was it 25% of their GDP comes from oil? Mm-hmm. And for a country of only about 5 million or so people, they have one of the largest sovereign wealth funds that the government has amassed, and most of that is from oil profits. Yeah. And it's interesting to see. But what has this country done? They've switched to the point where 90% or better of all new cars sold are electric. And now over half the cars on the road are electric.
Now let's clarify that. It said gasoline powered cars. So I'm wondering, and it doesn't clarify this, but I'm wondering because there was a period of time when diesel was the popular way to go. So I'm wondering if that 700 and what was it? It's like 758,000 cars are electric and 730,000 or whatever that number is are gas powered cars. So what I'm wondering is, does that just the gasoline powered cars, or does that include also the diesels? And I don't think that article was clear on that.
So Norway doesn't produce any cars. And
no, that's not actually true. They have produced. They were one of the earliest producers of electric cars in the world. Okay. Modern electric cars in the world. Yes. Not anything that you and I would necessarily be interested in, but they did the very first electric car share program. Was cars
but it was almost as ugly as that abomination the Russians made.
Well, now they came. Ford ended up buying them and
Okay.
renaming it the Think, and it's not a bad, attractive, unattractive little two-seat electric car.
It-
So Ford was building electric cars in Norway, not long after EV World came into existence
back in the late 90s.
in the late 90s. Yep.
So one of the things, like I ran into during the Berkshire Hathaway event, I ran into some guys who'd come over for the event from Norway, and I was
Hmm.
talking to them about electric cars, and they said that none of them owned a car. And I was like, I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like here in the United States, it's really hard to picture living your life without owning a car.
Why should you? Why would you? If you've got good public transit and you live in a commuting, walking friendly community, and maybe
Mhm.
you can work from home, a good share of the time. Why? Why do you want
Yeah,
a car?
I'm just saying it was an interesting comment. It makes me wonder how many people in Norway actually drive.
Well, we know that apparently there are what was the numbers are in the article. It's like 758,000 registered electrics and some smaller number registered gasoline cars. So that's what 1.5 million people,
Yeah, or 1.5 million cars.
one and a half
So
million
that would
cars,
be
and one figure.
30% of the number of people.
Yeah,
Um, let's
I'm assuming
see.
we could probably go online and say, what's the cars per, drivers per, G population there, and it would give us some number, I imagine. Here it's shockingly high. It's like in Nebraska alone, I think it's like over 2 vehicles per household, something like that.
Yeah, so the comment, the way they broke it down is 751,000 electric cars and 755,000 petrol only cars. So I'm going to assume then the electric car category, it might have combined hybrids and plug-in hybrids as
Possibly.
well as EVs, and the other one is cars that have none of those features.
Yeah.
Um, oh, this does
I
leave out one powertrain type, though, diesel, which was quite popular in Norway throughout the
yeah,
2000s and early 2010s.
yeah,
Diesels installed based crossed that of petrol only vehicles in late 2014.
yeah,
They've remained the most common vehicles on Norwegian's roads since then. There are just over 1 million diesel vehicles
yeah.
in Norway, so diesel only still reigns supreme on Norwegian roads ahead of EVs.
But then again, they've got a gas pump out in the North Sea just offshore.
But you know
So
what's interesting is um, across the world, one of the big things that EVs have been replacing has been diesel vehicles. So diesel car sales have really plummeted
yeah.
with the advent of EVs. But at one point, it seemed like diesel was more what might
Uh-huh.
might have been better for the
Uh,
environment because it was more efficient in those
uh,
cars.
until Dieselgate,
Right, with
until
Volkswagen.
Volkswagen's Dieselgate, yeah. Then we realized that it was not as clean as we were told it was.
All right, let's see. All right, so let's move on. Whoever created the EV leasing loophole subsidy is a clever genius. Now, one of the things
I thought you'd
that,
enjoy this one. That's why I
yes,
posted it.
yes, and it is pretty good, a pretty good topic. So when we discuss the EV rebates, one of the big things is where is the battery made? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can go and you can lease a car, an EV, and get the $7,500 factored into the lease. And if it's done right, the leasing company acts as a commercial finance company
Mm-hmm.
and they'll lease it, pass on the lease rebate as part of the price. But how they got around was it changes, there's no household income limits on the EV subsidy on a lease. The non-China battery content requirements are out the window,
Right.
and there's no limit to the vehicle price. So if
Yeah.
you wanted an EV that was over $80,000, you could still do it.
So
So
yeah. So can you show that graph? where it
Yeah.
shows it from like 2021 through second quarter of 2024. You can see the percentage of people leasing EVs, what happened. I mean, it just exploded.
Let me see if I can make this a little bigger.
There it is. Yeah.
There we go. So the
So
percent of EVs leased in 2021 was about 21%, jumps to 29%, to 33%, and then to 48%.
yeah,
Yeah. So, and then financed, it starts going the opposite direction.
right.
55% in 2021 drops to 34%. So whereas it went up 28%, it dropped 20% here.
Yeah.
And then cash purchases dropped from 23%, 22, 21, 16.6. Well, the thing is, they figured out a way to make it so basically anybody could get an EV and could, anybody at any income could qualify and any price point. So normally when we think about a lot of the EVs that are under the regular tax credit, there's only about 13 to 15 different EV models when the current rules came out for this year that even qualified without the lease. And so the lease has helped a lot of companies
Yeah.
get
And
around some of this.
I wonder how much that also reflects the, the early adopter folks who might have more disposable income. Then as we get further, into time here, you begin to reach the people that don't have quite as much disposable income. So they would look at, financing the car. And then you had this phenomenon of a change in the rules that allowed pretty much anybody to lease a car. And that's kind of a nice insurance, if you will, against the huge depreciation that somebody buying a car ends up absorbing. You buy these things are, I don't remember what the depreciation rate was like what, $500 a month or some crazy number like that on depreciation if you're trying to buy the car. So a car that you spent $45,000 on, by the time you've paid that, that thing off after 6 years or whatever it is, you're looking at, it being a quarter of what you paid for it.
Right.
So you don't get that with a 30 or 36-month lease, I don't think. Unless the leasing company factors those things into the lease, which I assume they probably do.
Yeah, they try to in some way or another. I'm always amazed at how leasing works. I mean, they try to get you to make a big enough upfront payment and limit the number of miles you can drive. So basically you're trading in a low mileage car.
Right.
With
less depreciation on it.
Yeah. I mean, like
you've absorbed a good chunk of that, depreciation with that first upfront payment.
I know, like on the deal on the Hummer EV that they were trying to offer for leasing, it was 7,500 miles a year. What was supposed to be the limit? So that's just over 600 miles a month.
Speaking of Hummer, somebody they found, and I didn't really look at the article closely. I just posted basically the headline and the link, but they found a relatively new Hummer EV abandoned out in the desert. So I assume you can look up the title or look up the VIN number and, find out who owned that thing. So it'd be interesting to see what the heck happened here. I don't know, any kind of stupid things or sinister things might have happened to why that thing got left out there.
Maybe somebody stole it.
Yeah, could be stolen.
You never know. Never know. All right. So today's next topic, we're going to talk about Jim Farley from Ford. So Jim Farley took a recent trip. It was actually in May to China, and it was a growing concern about global automotive industry, particularly for legacy automakers like Ford. This is one of the things we talk about on the show all the time. The big three U.S. automakers derive a lot of their income in other countries, and so even though BYD and the other Chinese companies aren't coming in the United States, they're going into all those other markets.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where they're going to be a problem for the big three. Farley was particularly struck by the speed at which Chinese automakers are evolving, leveraging advanced tech like AI in their vehicles and using the low-cost supply chains to dominate the market with competitively priced, tech-savvy models. Farley calls the rise of Chinese EV makers an existential threat to the U.S. automaker. This anxiety stems from the fact that these companies are not only outpacing competitors in technological integration, but also expanding aggressively into overseas markets, threatening the market share of traditional automakers. Well, we know that BYD has said they don't really care about being top in the EV industry. They're wanting to unseat the Toyota Corolla. They're looking to put something out there that can specifically unseat that car. Now, another example he gave was like the success of Xiaomi, which is a Chinese cell phone manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
And here's their latest cell phone. And would they take 100,000 plus pre-orders, and they've already delivered most of them?
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a good looking automobile. I'd be happy to drive that.
oh yeah, it looks really nice.
I think it looks good in the photograph. Now, what
Yes.
the quality is and what the safety of it is, and those kind of factors and how durable. That's another issue. That's
everybody always talks about how it looks like a Porsche. Okay, it's obviously a Porsche knockoff.
Yeah,
okay,
of course it is.
And there's been some videos released about quality issues with this vehicle or whatever, but this thing is like $35,000, and it's really hard to criticize it when it's basically replacing a $90,000 vehicle when it's almost a third of the price.
Which, by the way, I saw one here recently, going down Pacific Street over next to Trader Joe's. Sitting there at the thing, and this Porsche Taycan goes by, and I said to my wife, "There goes a Porsche." So that's really good looking. So yeah. So I think.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you saw a Xiaomi. I was going to say a Xiaomi.
No.
That would be rare.
Porsche Taycan, yeah, the one after which it is modeled.
Right. Let me see. Yeah, this is interesting. Farley said, executing to a Chinese standard is going to be the most important priority. And it's kind of like what Musk has said. It's the Chinese have become the big leagues of auto manufacturing, and people want to criticize and say, oh, they can't make quality or whatever. But the truth is they can. Yeah. And they've invested a lot of money in this. I mean, here we go. Here's a $10,000 EV right here. And
that's what I paid for my Fiat 500 with 23,000 miles on it. So yeah, and that's a 4-door. I'd be interested in trading.
Let me see. Anyways, Farley's trip to China is causing Ford to change some strategies. The big thing for Ford, they've got to be able to make cars cheaper. They're supposedly losing money on all the Lightnings. They're losing money on the Mach-E's. I don't know about their Proline van or whatever it's called, but it's a lot to try to keep making these cars be profitable. But I just thought, it's interesting because Farley definitely comes right out and says, hey, this is the real threat. And it's funny because we get criticized all the time about different things, like, oh, the Chinese cars are crap or whatever. It's like, oh, they're not. I'm sure they're better. 20 years ago when Hyundai first entered the US market, their cars were crap. Okay. And I'm sure the Chinese EV makers are definitely producing something better than what Hyundai and Kia were putting out 20 years ago.
Although we're still seeing criticisms from within the Chinese market as well as outside the Chinese market, to the quality of the Chinese cars that people have been getting. So time will tell. And
Yeah, but you can make up for a lot of quality by buying the car for a third the price.
oh well, yeah, exactly,
You know,
exactly. We
you
do
you,
that. Yeah.
you can you can tolerate a lot of differences in quality for that kind of money. When you're paying a premium price for the car, you expect premium quality, premium service. So
Okay, what's next?
next, I wanted to show and this was something I just came across while I was looking through some articles, and this company was advertising their product,
Oh
and I
yeah, the
thought this was
solar
kind of
thing. Yeah.
interesting. So, drive your EV on pure solar power. This is called the GoSun, and it's basically it's showing this EV, and it's got this solar blanket over the top, and it's about $3,000, and looks like they have 1,000 pre-sales. You can reserve one for $100, and it's going to be $3,000, but it may be eligible for the 30% tax credit for solar, which that's kind of cool if it
Interesting.
ends up being that, but they're not quite sure yet, it seems.
Yeah.
But you could get up to 30 miles a day on solar, easy to install on roof racks. Oh, so I guess what happens is
Yeah,
you
that's a
see
roof.
this
Yeah.
here on the roof rack.
Right.
So the device, Bill and I were talking about this before the show. The device weighs 70 pounds. Well, I guess if it's up here, so then you just pull it down here,
Right.
pull it down and back, and you have it. Okay, I was thinking that maybe you stuck it in the trunk, but it goes over
No. Okay.
the vehicle.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
So that'd be a little easier. You get a friend to help you put it up on the
Yeah.
roof rack or whatever, and it's I guess it'd be interesting, the retraction mechanism. Is it some kind of a mechanical retraction or electric retraction, or what,
Well,
manual? Just fold it up. And they got any video? I mean, this
let's
first
see.
I've
Yeah,
seen
there
it.
is video, but there it is folded up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says that the car top thing should be up to 80% of the vehicle's annual mileage. Part of that is how much solar do you get?
Where you are, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, where you're at.
it wouldn't do me a lot of good, other than I just pull my car out of the garage and have it sit in the sun all day. I mean, there it might, but if you're sort of driving, a daily commuter, you're going to your job or school or something like that, to the factory, whatever, and it's going to be sitting out all day. Yeah, might make sense.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty cool idea for $3,000, not having to worry about connecting to chargers and stuff like that.
I would wait for Consumer Reports to write up something on it first, though, before I buy.
I don't think Consumer Reports likes the EV industry. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, let's see. It's pre-assembled, can mount to your car's roof rack in about 20 minutes. Well, that doesn't sound fun. That sounds it takes 20 minutes. It sounds complicated. It withstands speeds up to 100 miles per hour and winds up to 30 miles per hour when extended. So you got to
Okay.
retract it if you're going to have Nebraska level wind.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, that's just kind of cool. It's like, hey, your battery runs out in the middle of nowhere. Well, just fold out the blanket and just wait till you get a little more juice and get going again.
It's an interesting concept. I could see where there would be applications for that. Particularly, as we talked about before, people living in family, housing situations where there's no place to charge it. So you get home. Of course, in this case, you'd probably want to be charging it at work, because by the time you get home, you got maybe a few hours of sunlight before it is no longer effective for you.
That's
where's it made? Who's the company?
Well, it's called GoSun. Let's see. And I'm going to assume it's made in the fantastic and innovative People's Republic of China. But I don't see that for sure. It says Cincinnati, Ohio, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to suspect. Yeah. Oh, they got all kinds of products, ovens, coolers, for water, campers, boats,
Yeah,
accessories.
they're getting that stuff out of China. I can
Yeah,
guarantee you.
yeah.
Or somewhere in Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand. But that's
But
okay. If they can do it,
yeah,
do it.
I'm sure it's made in China. But I thought that was kind of cool because that's, we look at the Aptera and what we're hoping it will do if it ever comes to market. This is along the same lines,
Yeah.
except the Aptera is charging even while you're driving it. Okay,
Yeah.
this one might
This
get a
could,
little bit of juice while you drive it, but not much.
now, it depends on what that top cover is. If that's still part of is that part of the panel? It doesn't, I don't know. It'd be nice to
It
have
looks like it.
somebody, if you've got a video, point us a link to a video of them actually deploying the thing and retracting the thing. That'll be interesting to see.
All right, let's see. All right, our last article is about Californians are ashamed to drive Teslas. Yeah, so the state that has the highest EV adoption.
I just for our listeners here, I will in the morning. I generally will send. We're getting ready to show. I will send a sort of a list of things that I think we ought to be talking about, and of course Dave is free to. Since he's a producer, he's free to, pick the stories that he wants to talk about. But this particular one, I labeled this one the Elon font in the room because I just had to come up with some way to describe what's going on here, because we've seen such, Elon makes this comment about the, why hasn't anybody tried to assassinate, Harris and Waltz, and which he later retracted and pulled off the internet, and just been making, and then he makes the, I'll help you get a kid, if you want one, you don't want to be a cat lady anymore, to
Taylor Swift.
to Taylor Swift. He's just making all these, stupid, in my view, insensitive comments. And of course, what's happening apparently, and I say apparently, is that people are, and I've actually met some people here locally who have expressed that same reservation that they either regret having bought one of his cars just because of the stuff he's been saying and doing, or they won't buy one now because of the things he's doing. So this is I can't say how big a thing. I mean, they're a wonderful EV. They brought us to to the state where we are now, where there's more and more of them on the road, which is a great thing. But I'm not exactly sure if he's firing on all cylinders.
Well, he has Asperger's, and that basically makes somebody act about half their age, and he does some very childish behavior stuff. But I've been around a lot of people with that condition, and it's just different. You just kind of have to roll with it. But the fact that he's such a proponent of free speech, but then he goes on and he basically trolls people by saying silly stuff, and
that's a man. The headline is he will probably be the world's first trillionaire. I don't know if I want that kind of influence and power in the hands of a guy with Asperger's. And
I get it. And
also, have you seen the headline that I mentioned this to you before we went on the air? A headline, I don't know if I posted it or not, but it says Elon Musk is a national security risk now. So, that, and whether that's an accurate reflection or not, I don't know. I'm not going to make the decision. Other than the fact that the headline exists, is concerning. And so this kind of the things that he's saying, I can understand why some people are saying we don't want his products anymore, or we're not happy that we bought his products. How pervasive that is, how many people that'll discourage, what the effect will be on the stock price. I think it's been going up, hasn't it, recently?
It has.
So it it's an interesting time in which to live. I don't have.
Yeah, the article talks about, it says Silicon Valley area sales for Tesla slipped by 22% in the first half of the year. And the region was once the Tesla hotspot, but rivals are quickly gaining ground as Musk continues polarizing the customer base. But there's some theories here. A lot of the Tesla vehicles they pretty much look the same as what they've looked since the beginning. That people are looking to try out other EVs. So,
and there's
I don't
competition.
know.
Yeah, there's more choices out there. And my God, if the Chinese ever breach the wall here, and you can pick up a car that looks like a Porsche Taycan for a third the price.
Right.
We'll see a lot of those cars on the road. So,
There's no question. But it's interesting to see the change. I mean, Elon's always considered himself to be a classic liberal, and liberals typically were the people who championed free speech. And now that Elon's in charge of free speech, people aren't happy with him. So it is
well,
kind of a bit of a quandary.
we've had this discussion about what is free speech, and what are you entitled to say? Is it free speech for me to yell fire in a theater? Yeah,
No,
right. No, exactly.
there's actually laws against doing behavior like that, because it's not really free
Exactly.
speech.
Exactly. So there's not really free speech. There has to be responsible speech, and blaming Haitians for eating all your pets, and
Yeah.
which the lady now says she made up anyway, right? When they went to talk to where this came from, the lady said, "Well, I made that up." So
Yeah,
free
but
speech.
I've heard 911, listen to 911 calls. They showed this video of this woman eating a cat in the driveway, but the thing was that wasn't even in the Springfield. It was in a different town in Ohio.
Oh,
And I don't know. You've got, you know, we were talking about this before. It's like, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that, people do crazy stuff, and there are people who are broke. When
mhm.
they're broke, stray animals
Let's
disappear. I
see
mean, it
what
used to be a
what
random joke always
what.
when you're around a
Yeah,
Chinese restaurant, that it's like, hey, notice there's no stray animals around.
yeah.
I
That's
mean,
yeah,
you don't hear people talk about that anymore.
and of course, what was it that RFK has been accused of eating? Right,
What?
RFK, right?
What's he been accused
Dog,
of eating? Oh,
eat
okay.
dog. Yeah, and
Nice.
that's not on my palate, but there are many parts of the world, and historically, as I've explained before, if you read the accounts of the fur traders and even Lewis and Clark, as they came up this river just over here a few miles from us, as they came up this river and stopped and met with the tribes along the way, the treat that the head of the tribe would get, that they would serve them, would be dog, right?
Hmm.
That was the backup fast food meal, whatever you want to call it. That was what they spread out for the the people. And then as Lewis and Clark got further and further west, and there were fewer and fewer dogs, then they resorted to eating their horses. So
Right.
it's just it's part of the culture. It's not part of ours. It's not something we. I'm sure the Native Americans probably had as much feeling and sense of camaraderie with their dogs as we were, but those dogs were working dogs, right?
Right.
Those dogs, before there were horses, and horses didn't come along until the 15th, 16th century. So before that, when the tribes were migrating and moving around and following the buffalo herds, the dogs were the ones that were the burden carriers. So they'd hook little travois on them, and they'd put all their equipment and their tents and belongings and things, and the dogs were the beast of burden.
Oh,
They were the
wow.
watchdogs. But when there weren't buffalo around and it was the depth of winter, right, and you didn't want to eat all your horses because that was your means of transport. That'd be like me going out and trying to eat my car, right?
Right.
So what you would do then is that you would had plenty of dogs around. You had the horse to do the burden carrying. You'd serve the horse. So, or in this case, you'd serve the dog. So it's just culture, but it's not generally acceptable, within the culture in which you and I live now. We just don't eat our dogs. We don't eat our cats. But there are places in the world where that has happened and probably continues to happen. I'm just not a fan of wanting to live in that particular culture. So.
No, I know, but it is fun seeing all of the images on Twitter of cats in combat gear carrying rifles, and all the different little memes.
Yeah, all the memes.
Made
He's been
it
a good meme developer, and unfortunately a distraction.
Yes, I think it's all in good fun. There's a new TikTok dance about the eating the dogs and cats too. So, I don't know how big of a trend that's going to be, but I've already seen videos on it.
Hopefully it's a passing thread, right? Just, we have more
I
important
know.
issues to talk about.
No, I know. When I think about Ohio, I think about all of the Lebanese immigrants in Toledo, and I've gone there and had excellent Lebanese food.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'll go there looking for a Haitian restaurant, though.
I don't know. I don't know what that country's had. Pretty much since the Spanish came in there and started to introduce slave labor and things. It's not had.
It's
a good
not been
history.
a pretty country.
It's and it's just not. And then of course, the French didn't treat him any better. The French probably treated him just as bad, if not worse. And the Haitian people said enough.
Yeah, weren't they the first country to revolt?
They were the first black country
back in like 1850 or something like that.
No,
and
no, even earlier than that.
Was it earlier than that?
Yeah, it was in the early 1800s, 1817, 16. That period of time.
And the country never fully developed after that.
No,
and I think that other countries probably embargoed them and different things like that.
And the French slapped on them a huge. What's the word? There's a word for this term, much like the United or the European allies in World War I slapped that huge payment, onto the Germans for reparations.
Right.
So the French, if my memory serves, and please again, I'm not an expert in this area, but the French slapped on the Haitian government a huge reparation that I think they eventually repaid, but it took decades for them to repay that. And so they started off, deeply in the red as a country, and haven't really, been one dictator after another dictator, and so
understandable. Anyways, Bill, that was all, and we've actually gone almost a full hour today.
Oh, God, too much. You
keep talking about
you kind people who have borne with us. Thank you.
I'm really always amazed at how many people stick through and watch the whole thing, considering it's just two old guys rambling on. So, anyways, folks, thanks for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow with engineer Mike Herzog, and we'll be back on Thursday with Bill. Next week we've got. On Tuesday, we have Marco Soriano from Soriano Motori is going to come on with us. He's a fascinating, classy guy, that 100-year-old motorcycle manufacturer that's gone 100% electric.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right, folks.
That'll be a fun one. All right.
We're signing off.
Arrivederci.
Thanks for watching.